Magamalan, folks. It is I, once again, Kamal, of the Misty Mountains. And today we have the integral from 0 to 1 of sine of floor of 1 over x dx. And yeah, it does look like I may have an unhealthy obsession with floor function integrals, but all is well that ends in wacky solution developments for such integrals. So yeah, I think we're in the clear. So how on earth do we evaluate this thing? We'll of course target the floor function first. Now for 1 over x bound between k plus 1 and k, the floor of 1 over x, this thing returns k. Okay, cool. So that means if I want to write floor of 1 over x equal to k, this will imply that x should be bound between 1 over k plus 1 and 1 over k. So what we could do is decompose the integral from 0 to 1. We'll write out the integral from 0 to 1 as the sum over k from, let's see, we have 1 over k, so that means it should be k from 1 to infinity, of the integrals from 1 over k plus 1 to 1 over k, and that should do the trick for us. Okay, cool. So this implies that the target integral I equals the sum over k from 1 to infinity of the integrals from 1 over k plus 1 to 1 over k of the sine of floor of 1 over x will turn into k, of course, for such intervals. So that means the integrand is now independent of the x variable with respect to which we're integrating anyway. So that means I can just write this thing as sum over k from 1 to infinity. Sine of k is outside of the integration operator, or the sinc is outside the integration operator. Let that sinc out in this case. And the result is just going to be the length of the interval. So that is 1 over k plus 1. Oh, terribly sorry about that. 1 over k minus 1 over k plus 1. And I'll just multiply out the sinc. So that gives me sum over k from 1 to infinity of sinc of k minus the sinc of k plus 1. We've actually let a couple of sincs in this time. Or was it the same sinc that is now cloned? I guess we'll never know. Okay, cool. This is interesting now, but before I apply linearity, I'm just going to write this thing as the limit as n tends to infinity of the sum over k from 1 to n of sinc over k minus cinco de mayo over k plus 1. Oh, no, this thing is just the sinc version. The other integral will be evaluated in a future video, or sum in this case. And now, given that I'm dealing with finite partial sums, I'm going to apply the linearity of the summation operator. So this is going to be the sum over k from 1 to n of sinc of k minus the sum over k from 1 to n, terribly sorry about that, of the sine of k, got you there, over k plus 1. And there's got to be some way to deal with the k plus 1 term in the denominator over here. I mean, it's kind of unsavory if you think about it. But of course, we can adopt, or we can invoke, one of the mathematician's favorite tricks, and that is adding a 0. So we will write sine of k here as sine of k plus 1 minus 1, which can be expanded as the sine of k plus 1 times the, terribly sorry about the cosine of 1, minus the sine of 1 times the cosine of k plus 1. And that really does help with the index. So this implies that I here is equal to the limit as n tends to infinity of the sum over k from 1 to n of sinc over k. I should probably stop saying that. That's enough fun and games. Minus the sum over k from 1 to n of the sine of k plus 1, and cosine of 1 is just a constant with respect to the summation anyway. So we'll write this thing as negative outside. Cosine of 1, two negatives should cancel out for the other term. So I will get sine of 1 times the sum over k from 1 to n of the cosine of... I need some more writing space. Much better. So that is the cosine of k plus 1 over k. Okay, cool. But now, of course, I need parentheses over here, and I should play around with the indices a little bit. So for this sum over here, this is the sum over k from, let's shift k plus 1 to the k realm. That should do it. I mean, technically speaking, I'm invoking a substitution, and I don't know math, so I don't want to mess up any of the arithmetic. So let k plus 1 equal to lowercase n, or m, any variable would work, but then the sum starts at 2. Okay, cool. So if I shift k plus 1 to k, in that case, I have the sum over k from 2 to n of sine of k over k. And this itself is equal to the sum over k from 1 to n of sine of k over k minus the sine of 1 over 1 term, which of course is equal to 1. So that means I could combine the first couple terms in the parentheses. So I have the limit as n tends to infinity of what exactly? Oh yeah, that should be a 1 minus a cosine of 1. So 1 minus cosine 1. And we have factored out a sum over k from 1 to n of the sinc. Terribly sorry about that. I just had to let that sink in. Way too many dad jokes today on my part. Anyway, 1 minus cosine of 1 is dealt with. But then we also have these two negative signs canceling out, and we have a cosine of 1 sine of 1 term. And I think we'll have another such term because of the sum over here. If I invoke exactly the same transformation, that is k plus 1 going to the k realm, and of course remembering that there was a k plus 1 down there in the denominator, terribly sorry about that. So another transformation here, that is to say the same transformation over here, would result in a plus sine of 1 times a cosine of 1 as well, right? So that means there's a plus sign over here as well. That means I have a factor of 2 over here. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And no, wait, hold up. Minus, yeah, cosine 1, sine 1. That should cancel out quite nicely. So let me just show that calculation over here. So that should be plus the sine of 1 times the sum over... I will need more writing space. So let me just shift this a bit. So there's a translation plus a scaling. So that is sine of 1 times the sum over k from 1 to n of cosine of k over k minus the cosine of 1. So that means we do indeed have a cancellation taking place, which is even better. So the result is the limit as n tends to infinity of 1 minus cosine of 1, terribly sorry about that, times the sum over k from 1 to n of sine of k over k, terribly sorry about that, plus the sine of 1 times the sum over k from 1 to n of cosc over k. That sounded worse. Anyway, now we need to evaluate a couple of these sums in the limit as n tends to infinity. Terribly sorry about that. What is wrong? Oh, wait, this is the perfect opportunity to practice my curly bracelet. That was gorgeous, and that was not half bad. Okay, cool. So I'm going to call this thing S sub 1. Terribly sorry about that. I will someday get this right 100% of the time in a particular video, but that day is not today. So I'm going to call the sine sum as S1 and the cosine sum as S2. And the good news is both of these sums actually converge quite nicely via some complex analysis. And we do know via Euler's beautiful formula that sine and cosine are just two parts of the complex exponential. We do know that e to the I theta is cosine of theta plus I times the sine of theta. Theta here is a real number, of course. Now, if you recall, the logarithm of 1 minus z can be expanded as the sum over k. Terribly sorry about that. My sums have been a bit off today. The sum over k from 1 to infinity of z to the k over k. Rather, there should be a negative sign over there via integrating the geometric series. And this is true for the absolute value of z being less than 1. And I know what you're thinking. The absolute value of the exponential function is equal to 1. So that looks like a bummer. But if we replace e to the ik by epsilon e to the ik, where epsilon here is a real number in the interval bound between 0 and 1, and we consider the limiting case of epsilon approaching 1 from the left, I guess we can avoid the pitchforks. Anyway, so let's go back to the evaluation. So the logarithm, or rather let me write the sum first, the sum over k from 1 to infinity of e to the ik over k, this thing can be written out, I mean this is the expanded version, but this thing can be written out as the logarithm of 1 minus e to, of course this is e to the ik, so this is e to the I. Principal logarithm, of course. And now we need the real and imaginary parts of the right-hand side, because the real part will correspond to the cosine result, and the imaginary part will correspond to the sine result. Okay, cool. Now, log of 1 minus e to the I has a real part that is log absolute value of 1 minus e to the I, plus I times the principal argument of 1 minus e to the I. So we need to evaluate both of these things. And for that purpose, I will once again expand the complex exponential. We will write it as, this is e to the I times 1. So that means I have 1 minus cosine of 1 minus I times the sine of 1. And of course, I need the principal argument of exactly that term. That is 1 minus cosine of 1 minus I times the sine of 1. Okay, cool. So, oh, terribly sorry about that. I needed the absolute value, but that's pretty easy to calculate. I just need a big ol' square root. And I need the square of the real part, 1 minus cosine 1 squared, plus sine of 1 squared. And then, of course, I need the argument, the principal argument, that is. Okay, now notice something, that cosine of 1 and sine of 1 are both in the first quadrant. Cosine of 1, cosine of 0 is 1, so cosine of 1 should be less than 1, because we know it does fall off after getting to 1. So 1 minus cosine of 1 is positive, sine of 1 is also positive, so we are in the first quadrant. So we might as well just use the arctangent. So we have I times the arctangent of what exactly? Oh yeah, the imaginary part, that is sine of 1 over 1 minus cosine of 1. And that means we have 1/2 the logarithm of, let me just expand the square, that should be 1 plus cosine square of 1 minus 2 cosine of 1 plus sine square of 1, which we know can be combined with the cosine square to give us another 1. And that means we have 1 plus 1, which is 2. So we have 2 minus, terribly sorry about that, the cosine of 1, which looks dope. And then we have I times the arctangent of sine of 1 can be expanded as 2 times sine of 1/2 times the cosine of 1/2, whereas 1 minus cosine of 1 can be expanded as twice the cosine square of 1/2, double angle formulae every damn day. So we do have cancellation taking place over here and over here. And no, wait, terribly sorry about that. This is the sine counterpart. 1 minus 2 sine squared. Yes, of course, this is the sine counterpart. So that means the sine cancels out and you have a cosine over sine left, which we know is cotangent. So this thing over here is 1/2 of log 2 minus 2 cosine of 1 plus I times the arctangent of the cotangent of 1/2. Okay, cool. And of course, we can simplify this even further if we recall a really cool relationship between cotangent and tangent. Arc cotangent and arc tangent, that is. So arc tangent of x plus arc cotangent of x actually equals pi over 2. So this implies that the arc cotangent of 1/2 is actually equal to pi over 2 minus the... Does that even help, though? Nah, actually, I will need the arc tangent. The arc tangent of x is equal to pi over 2 minus the arc cotangent of x. And I'm interested in x here equal to arc cotangent of 1/2, which is dope. And this implies that... What exactly was on my left-hand side? I am forgetting. Oh, yeah. This implies that the logarithm of 1 minus e to the I is going to be equal to 1/2 the logarithm of 2 minus 2 cosine of 1 plus, what exactly do we have? Oh yeah, we have an I times a pi over 2 term minus the arc cotangent of the cotangent of 1/2. Terribly sorry about that. And that means we're just left with a factor of 1/2. Okay, cool. Now all that's left is the requirement to take negative signs and real and imaginary parts. So we do know that this thing is equal to the sum over k from 1 to infinity of e to the I k over k. So this is negative 1/2 the logarithm of 2 minus 2 cosine of 1 minus or plus I times 1/2 minus pi over 2. And we need the real and imaginary parts. So this implies that the sine of k, that is to say the sum over k from 1 to infinity of sine of k over k, is in fact equal to 1 minus pi over 2, whereas the cosine sum, which also looks pretty damn nice, is equal to... Oh, that's not exactly very nice k. That is slightly better. I was trying to get my handwriting to be less cursive. Why is it becoming more cursive? This thing is equal to negative 1/2 of the logarithm of 2 minus 2 cosine of 1. Okay, cool. So this implies that the target integral I equals something quite nice. It is equal to 1 minus cosine of 1 times this result over here. That is 1 minus pi over 2. And of course, we had a negative sign somewhere, or was it a plus sign? Oh yeah, it was a plus sign and a sign of 1. So that turns into a negative sign of 1 over 2. Terribly sorry about that. Of the logarithm of 2 minus 2 times the cosine of 1. So some interesting numbers involved here. That is cosine of 1 and sine of 1. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. Wait a minute. After confirming with Wolfram Alpha, this should be a pi minus 1, and I understand why. So remember this whole arctangent jazz? So this is of the form x minus I times y. Y, of course, itself being positive. So that means we are in the second quadrant. No, wait. What quadrant is that? Oh yeah, this is the fourth quadrant. So the arctangent over here should yield a negative sign instead, and that makes perfect sense, sign-wise anyway. So here's another one, and there's another one over there, just catching stray negative signs here. And okay, cool. That means I had another negative sign here, and that means... No, wait, this was supposed to be a plus sign with a pi over 2 minus 1/2. Okay, cool. So that means the result should be pi minus 1 over 2. So that's the only edit required over here. I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to like and subscribe. I hope you learned something from the video. Thank you. See you next time.